Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Labor Vision, a program that focuses on working people in the state of Rhode Island. My name is Jim Cenerini, and I work as the Legislative Affairs Coordinator for Rhode Island Council 94. Today's topic is layoffs. Now, we know it's the holiday season, and many of you are occupied planning a lot of family gatherings, attending holiday parties, as well as finishing all of the Christmas shopping. However, there are some important things that are going on in the state of Rhode Island due to recent budget difficulties, and many families have been thrown into a state of uncertainty. Joining me today is a very good panel that I'm very excited to be able to host. Sitting to my right is Dennis Grilli, who is the Executive Director of Rhode Island Council 94. Next to Dennis is J. Michael Downey, the President of Council 94. And then we're joined with three members from Council 94 who are subject to the layoffs. The first of which is Molly Soom, who is an interpreter at the Department of Human Services. The second is Ronald Dutra. And the third person sitting right next to me is an employee of the Department of Environmental Management, Catherine Bennett. So what we would do is like to start off and talk a little bit about, we keep on hearing over and over again that there is a lot of talk about the growing deficit in the state of Rhode Island. Governor Kachiri has boldly proclaimed that there is a $200 million deficit that is facing the state. And it seems that the deficit just keeps on growing exponentially. The most recent estimates have had the deficit growing to $400 to $450 million. So talking a little bit about where we've come from in the last year, because people may remember we had a difficult budget last year, is Dennis Grilli, who's our Executive Director. Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about what happened last year with the budget?
Sure, Jim. If you recall, the governor came out last year and indicated he wanted to basically have a job freeze, and he wanted to privatize. He wanted to have furlough days, and he wanted to cut our wages. So with that in mind, the union sat down with the governor's team and tried to negotiate some type of settlement that would recognize the problems with the state's budget and also help the employees. We had gone for months and months and months trying to negotiate a packet that was acceptable to the state as well as the unions. We were very close to that. We had millions and millions of dollars on the table when the governor pulled the plug on that negotiation process. And we never got to present that package to our members. So we've been out in the forefront trying to help resolve this issue, even though I feel it's not only a union issue, it's a state issue. It's not a state employee issue, it's a state of Rhode Island issue, and I keep saying that. Many of our locations, Elmer Slater Hospital, Veterans Home, have been identified for privatization, and even with that in mind, we sat down at the table trying to resolve these matters. We also have made significant cuts in those areas through agreement with the state to help ease the deficit in those locations, which would in turn help the state budget.
Now, we actually had engaged in that dialogue in improving those areas, like the housekeeping at Eleanor Slater Hospital, as well as the dietary at the Veterans Home. And I know at Eleanor Slater Hospital, we did in fact, even though the governor was threatening us with privatization, we made moves to consolidate, what was it, bargaining units to actually reduce overtime? Or
yeah, there was a problem there where we had a restriction on bargaining unit work between two of our bargaining units. And it was costing them money in overtime costs because some employees couldn't cross over to the other bargaining and so on and so forth. So we agreed to eliminate that problem, and we signed an agreement a couple of months ago. The money we saved has been a significant amount of money for that department. I believe it's over $250,000.
Now, when we found out about the governor's plan, allegedly to lay off 1,000 employees, I mean, it was pretty sudden. I mean, it seemed like negotiations just imploded. They walked away quick, and was it overnight that things just fell apart?
It seemed like it was, yes, it was overnight, and I think his citing of this 1,000 employees that he wanted to have laid off was a knee-jerk reaction by him. It seemed to happen instantaneously right after the negotiations broke down. So, and I think he's been scrambling to find that 1,000 employee mark. But he's made inroads at Council 94. As you know, we ended up with having 83 people laid off.
Okay. I think one thing that we should probably move to is to talk a little bit about the actual process that we've been engaged to right now. And what I'd like to ask Mike is, I know that this has been a very difficult process for you as president of the council. Mike, you also are a rank and file member, and you have been present every single day of the bumping process working with members. So how has the process gone so far? And by the way, when I start off, what exactly is a bump? Because not everybody knows contract language or works under a contract.
Yes, and thank you, James, for the opportunity to explain to taxpayers, which we all are, what's going on in the workforce with state employees. And regards to the bumping, what actually is taking place is the Governor Kacheri's administration identified approximately 83 members that we represent, along with others. But the topic that we're here for is the Council 94 members that have, for the past 2 weeks, we've set up office down in the headquarters on 1179 Charles Street. And the members have come in and they have been shown lists that are 3 or 4 or 6 inches high. It's been very confusing for them, along with the union too. And that's not our fault. The state went out of their way to put together a list. They claim they were down at Alton Jones putting this list together, but they, I don't think, took much time when they went about laying off some of the most senior employees in the state, therefore making the bumping process more chaotic than it needed to be. But for the past 2 weeks, we have, as union leaders, been with our members and going through the list with them, trying to find jobs that they could perform. They have to stay within their pay grade. They cannot go higher. They have to sometimes go lower. And incidentally, he also has laid off statutory status people. We find that to be a little bit of a problem, and quite honestly, we're watching all of that to, it may be that we have to do some grievances, arbitrations, or court action, because it seems to us that those people which he loves to hire making over $100,000 a year get treated much differently than the $30,000 employees that we majority represent. So we have found that management is taking care of themselves. For instance, in the Department of Health, Dr. Gifford says that he can't lay anybody off with statutory status in management, but they don't have a problem doing that with those making $30,000. We have tried to make a comfortable situation for our employees best we could. Again, it wasn't us to put this list together, and I'm glad it wasn't, because we certainly wouldn't have picked the most senior people. So the bumping process is very confusing, not because of us, because of management. If management took upon themselves to lay off the least senior people rather than the most senior people, it certainly wouldn't be as chaotic as it is. But we've been going through lists. We're at the point where the initial people that were laid off have picked selections. Certainly they would have loved to stay in their own positions, but now they are going to be going to positions that they had to bump into, that they're qualified to do, and either they're same money or less.